and then that specific time, okay, we see the rise of intellectual awakening. Intellectual awakening means people are now not going to go by the established traditions. Vedic religion has always been dominant for 1,000 years roughly, but now it was bound to be challenged by some new legal luminaries in terms of religion. They were bound to come up with new ideas, okay, they're bound to come up with new specific logics which are going to now have a kind of tackling with Vedic religion. Okay, so this is the 6th century BC. In 6th century BC, we see the rise of major political and social changes. Key events which are linked here: revival of trade as well as urbanization. We see birth of Buddha as well as Mahavir. This is very, very important, the birth of Buddha and Mahavir, and these two will be responsible for the rise of major religions, rise of Buddhism and Jainism, and emergence of new religious order with new beliefs and philosophies. Okay, at the same time, the 6th century BC, it is not just important in Indian history, it is important even in the case of Persia, because Zoroastrian, जो Parsi religion है, it becomes prominent from 6th century BC in Iran or Persia. Similarly, in case of China, we see rise of two important personalities. One was Confucius, okay, and this Confucius was responsible for a major religion which is known as Confucianism, and second it is Taoism. So 6th century BC is not just about India. Please इसको आप ध्यान रखना, ठीक है. When we go for the major syllabus, वहाँ हम इन सब की बातें नहीं करेंगे, Confucius, Taoism, etc. इनकी बात नहीं होती है. Why? Because syllabus से directly related नहीं है. But since you know this, you can make very good introduction. But 6th century BC was about intellectual awakening in the whole of the world, okay, or in various civilizations. We see this in Persia, we see this in China, and even in India, we see the rise of Buddhism as well as Jainism as major forces. Okay, so this is something which we can remember about 6th century BC. Let us move forward. इसको second number पे करेंगे. This is the, you see here, Zoroastrianism is going to rise here. In case of India, the birthplace of Buddha was in Nepal. Okay, so Nepal में उन्होंने mention किया हुआ. Then we have Mahavir, and in China we have Confucius and Taoism. So the whole world was witnessing some new ideas, and these ideas are bound to have a major impact. See it in terms of the people who are the followers. Even though if we see in the case of Iran, Zoroastrianism eventually is going to be taken over by Islam. Okay, but in case of Buddhism, Buddhism is going to spread to China, it's going to spread to the whole of Southeast Asia. Okay, the case of Jainism, Jainism was never a religion which was followed by a very high number of people. However, those who established their faith in Jainism eventually remained very loyal to this. So in India, places like Gujarat, Rajasthan, as well as the area of Karnataka, these are the areas where we have seen major followings of Jainism, and they have remained all together since from those times. From India, Buddhism did not survive for a very long time. Okay, by the early medieval period, eventually we see the rise of Hinduism, and many of the ideas of Buddhism were taken within this. Even Buddha was made one of the avatar of Vishnu. So this doctrine of incarnation is very strong. Okay, so in Hinduism बहुत आसान है marketing. I'll tell you later on how they do it eventually. And in case of China, if we see today's modern China, so in modern China, even though it is communist, that does not mean nobody is following a religion. Many people, they follow the principles of Confucius. Many are followers of Buddhism. Okay, but there are followers of Buddhism also, because as all of us know, two famous travelers, Fayan and Hunsang, they came from China, and from when they came to India, eventually they learned about all the principles. They even translated these Buddhist texts, and through this Buddhism traveled to China. So थोड़ा सा बात करते हैं कन्फ्यूशियस और ताओइज्म के बारे में. ये आपको इथिक्स वगैरह में भी थोड़ा हेल्प कर जाएगा, ठीक है. वहां पर भी पूछते हैं किस किस के बारे में, किस बेसिक आइडियाज क्या क्या है. Okay, so two great thinkers, we have already discussed about this. Okay, initially the ideas which they gave, they were responsible for moral as well as social behavior, how you should behave in a society. Okay, how you should take decisions, what should be specific qualities to be followed. And eventually after their death, we see the rise of various temples, and Confucius exerted a big influence not only on the political class of China but also on the common people. That's why Confucius is more famous. Just like in India, Buddhism is more famous. Why Buddhism is more famous in India? because naturally the whole world has accepted its ideas. Okay, even though in terms of followers of the religion we have more percentage of Jainism, however more popular is still Buddhism. Let us see Confucius. Okay, so Confucius, he was born in Shantung province of China. He studied history, poetry, philosophy, music. There are 5 important works which are directly linked to him. Like we have this book of records, which talks about ethics, which talks about the various regulations of human society. Then the book of odds, which gives us various principles of morality. Book of changes, spring and autumn annals, and finally the book of history. So various work were linked to Confucius. And the most important part with respect to Confucius, okay, these are his 5 cardinal principles. Even ethics में भी जब आप पढ़ते हो, ठीक है, so you can utilize them in the case studies. What are the cardinal principles with respect to Confucius? जो Chinese ethics है, okay, in that these 5 principles are very important. Not with the communist government, वो अलग, ठीक है, at least at the level of the ethics. Humaneness, that you should be human, you should be kind in your behavior, you should respect everyone else. Righteousness, okay. Third, propriety. What is the meaning of propriety? It means your conduct should be fair. Okay, it should take into consideration all the established traditions. It should not be आप जो मन में चाहे वो कर सकते हो. Wisdom, very very important. Okay, because wisdom is something which we learn through experience, and once we learn it, we should utilize our wisdom. And most important part of any relationship, this is trustworthiness. Trustworthiness with respect to interpersonal relationship, trustworthiness with respect to our relationship with the state, even though it's an abstract identity, but still without trust a nation cannot stand together. Okay, these were the 5 major principles which were linked to Confucius. सिर्फ रफली याद कर सकते हो, कभी भी देखो जब एग्जाम में आंसर्स लिख रहे होते हैं ना, अगर क्रॉस कल्चरल हिस्ट्री के ऊपर एक भी पॉइंट आ जाता है, that increases the beauty of the answer. Then he said that if you follow these 5 principles, उससे फायदा क्या होगा आपको? Number 1 is going to become a source of wisdom for everyone. Second, strong society can be built up on the basis of this. Number 3, he said that the superior man, not just about intelligence or knowledge, but also exemplary character. Character is more important when it comes to a superior man, not about capabilities, not about just superficial intelligence. 3 virtues, intelligence, courage and goodwill, ensures balance in relationships. Okay, children should obey parents, wife should obey. अब now वो patriarchal तो आना ही है, ठीक है? Now that is up to you what you wish to do. Next, however, there is a limit. One should resist wrong commands from superiors. So he has left some of the ideas like conscience, अंतरात्मा जो होती है ना, which is a kind of quote within ourselves through which we judge should we follow it or we should not follow it. So he has given that kind of freedom to everyone, that even though you should obey your elders, but if some wrong kind of command is coming, then you can resist it. It's not like that you can go for 100% undivided loyalty. And good governance, he says, these are the 3 principles which every government should follow. Number 1, sufficient food for the people. Number 2, strong military for defense. And number 3, public trust and confidence in the leader. This is how a strong governance can be ensured in any of the country. All these ideas, they belong to Confucius, and they were primarily eventually used by the Chinese. Taoism, okay, or Lao Tzu, he is considered one of the greatest philosopher before Confucius and said to have been around 53 years older. So 50 साल बड़े थे लगभग. Then he authored a short book in 2 parts before disappearing. There is a kind of story about him कि एकदम से disappear हो गए थे. Okay, initially he was very influential, but then he left everything and went away. And there is a lot of mystery which is surrounding the Taoism. Then his teachings are important. Why? They're very much related to Buddhism. They're very much related to Buddhism. Let's see number 1, source of unhappiness. So Buddha ने sorrow के ऊपर ले लिया. Source of unhappiness. Argued that human selfishness is the root cause of unhappiness. If we are unselfish in our life, तो happiness ज़्यादा रहेगी. That's what he's saying. Second, selfishness fuels limitless desires. पहुंच गए ना desires के ऊपर, अभी आएगा बुद्धिज्म में. वहाँ पे सबसे पहली चीज क्या होगी? There is sorrow. This sorrow is because of desire. Okay, if you control the desire, eventually you can become happy. This again, so that's why Taoism is very much linked to same ideas like Buddha. इसको आप याद कर सकते हो, which are inherently unfulfillable and lead to unhappiness. Okay, we have only one life, but we think like we are living in multiple universes. 50 हमारे wants होते हैं अलग अलग. Okay, we want to be number one also, है ना, पढ़ाई में भी, स्पोर्ट्स में भी, म्यूजिक में भी. कितनी चीजें चाहिए एक बारी में? You can't be number one in everything. It's impossible. There's human diversity, है ना, different set of talents we have, but still our wants, when we want something, है ना, हमारा ध्यान ऐसे रहता है कि सब कुछ मिल जाए हम लोगों को. Number 3, nature as a model. Now this is something which is a very powerful belief. अगर कभी ऐसे में सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट की बात करें, ठीक है, तो सी दिस नेचर एज अ मॉडल. ही सेज दैट नेचुरल वर्ल्ड फंक्शंस हार्मोनियसली. ह्यूमन बिहेवियर शुड स्ट्राइव फॉर अ सिमिलर बैलेंस. ओके, लाइक इफ यू सी द वर्ल्ड, सब कुछ है ना, वी हैव माउंटेन्स आल्सो, रिवर्स आल्सो, एवरीथिंग इज देयर एंड देयर इज अ फाइन बैलेंस. Just like that, our life is also going to have some sorrows. Our life is also going to have some happiness. Some wants will be able to have, some wants will never have in life. Some things we can control, something we can never control. So we should be aware about those smaller things. And this is what he's saying. Follow nature as a model. Then he talks about knowledge and its impact. He says that gaining knowledge has taken humans away from natural state of innocence. Initially, हम innocent थे. Okay. Now that is debatable. That is debatable, right? If we see the British they always differentiate that initially people were savage, savage थे, and then eventually we created a civilization. But he is going the opposite way. He is saying initially we were innocent. It depends upon how you treat human, how you think about human. Everybody thinks differently about us. Like if you see people like your Arthashastra written by Kautilya. Kautilya says that humans are inherently selfish. वो भी यही बोलते हैं, we are inherently selfish. That's why every person thinks differently about human, and on the basis of that we are going to see some theory. तो यहाँ भी यही है. He's saying that because of knowledge we have changed from our innocent being, and then he says this knowledge has led to development of complex societies but also unhappiness. Why complex societies? Because the initial societies, there's only having one thing: you have to somehow save yourself, you have to ensure existence. Everybody was indulged either in hunting and food gathering or agriculture. But see today, how many professions are there? How many professions are there? So we have become a very complex society. Every small thing has diverse set of profession. हर किसी के लिए expertise अलग है. We see अब today, आज की डेट में अगर हम एक बच्चा पैदा होता है ना, a person is born, eventually they have so many things to do. Previously it was so simple. So that's why today's societies are very, very complex, and that's what he talked about. And because of this increasing complexity, unhappiness is also increasing, because it is increasing your wants. अब चाहिए क्या, वो उसकी वजह से increase हो रहा है. If we see Zoroastrianism, so this was something which was going to develop in Persia. This is considered one of the world's oldest revealed religion. Okay, you should be aware about it because India also has a minority Parsi community, but economically very powerful. Tatas, the vaccine gurus, who are these Poonawala? तो वैक्सीन किसने बनाया था? वहीं से आया था, Parsis. Okay, so one of the world's oldest revealed religion. Historical significance: the official religion of 3 major Iranian empires from 6th century BC that dominated the Middle East. Later on, it was replaced by Islam. Okay, the founder was Zoroaster of Persia. The belief, the core belief, it is monotheism. Monotheism means belief in only one God. Belief in one God, and that God name is Ahura Mazda, the Lord of Light. Okay, the Lord of Light. Their holy book is known as Zen Avesta, which is very much linked to our which book? Rig Veda. Very close to it. Similar kinds of gods and goddesses are mentioned. And the content, it has hymns, और उसके अंदर mantras हैं, prayers हैं, laws, myths, historical reflections, and doctrines and rituals share similarity with those found in the Vedas, that is our ancient Indian scriptures. Rig Veda के साथ बहुत similarity है of this Zen Avesta, and this Zoroastrianism is something very important in case of Persia. Now they have their particular set of teachings. उनकी भी अपनी कुछ specific. They taught that great object of religion, state, or society is the cultivation of morality. This is the only objective of state, society, that there should be cultivation of morality. And the highest religion concept is purity of thought, word, as well as deed or action. Okay. Ahura Mazda is omniscient, means they are talking about the qualities of the God. Omniscient means knows everything, omnipotent, all powerful, and finally omnipresent. It is present everywhere. And in this, sacrifice and image worship, they were discarded. Both of these things, they were not required. Fire was worshipped as a symbol of deity and considered the highest form of worship. So fire, why fire was given the maximum? Because it is directly linked with the god, which was the lord of light, because fire gives us light. And charity was made an essential part of religion, and service to the poor was particularly emphasized. That's why these are the major elements of Zoroastrianism. Okay, in 2012 जब तक पैटर्न चेंज नहीं हुआ था यूपीएससी का, तो यूपीएससी ऐसे क्वेश्चंस भी पूछता था, व्हाट आर द मेन आइडियाज ऑफ Zoroastrianism. So even though it's not a part of your optional, but it can all any day be asked in your prelims or मेंस पेपर, कभी भी पूछ सकते हैं, बिकॉज रिलीजन्स एज अ होल यूपीएससी कुछ भी पूछ सकता है. तो थोड़ा सा इसके बाद आपको आइडिया लग जाएगा, अच्छा रहेगा. ठीक है, लेट अस नाउ टेक द इजीएस्ट टॉपिक्स, है ना, जैनिज्म. So if we talk about Jainism, I hope all of you know the story about Mahavir. Okay, what was the story? How do we see the rise of Jainism? Okay, so in Jainism we have a concept of Tirthankar or the teachers. So how many teachers are there? 24 teachers were there. Okay, and before Mahavir there were 23 teachers. He was the 24th one and probably the most influential one. Jainism wasn't the initial name. Please remember that. Okay, initially they were not using the word Jaina. The initial name they used were Nir Granthas. Okay, Nir Granthas was the initial name, means somebody who is free from bonds, from any kind of existence. As per this Jain tradition, we use Mahavir as central figure, but not the founder. Who was the founder? The founder was Rishabh. Okay, Rishabh ji, he was the founder. He was the first Tirthankar according to Jain text. Okay, even Yajurved mentions 3 earlier Tirthankar: Rishabha, Ajitnatra, as well as the Arishtanami. All these 3 are mentioned even in the Yajurved. Mahavir's role, what was his role then? Okay, he was the 24th one. He is known as Jina. Jina means somebody who is a conqueror, somebody who can conquer everything around him. A title signifying his victory over the cycle of rebirth. Okay, established Jainism as a distinct religion, and he organized followers into monastic as well as lay followers. Monastic means those who are going to become monk. Lay followers who are going to be follower of Jainism, but they don't have to follow all the 5 vows. There are 5 vows of Jainism which we'll talk about. उनमें से कुछ vows हैं जो lay followers को follow करना जरूरी नहीं है, जैसे कि celibacy. Like if somebody is going to get married, they cannot have celibacy. So lay followers, common followers, they have some relaxed rules which are going to be followed by them. But anyway, Jainism is something which is very, very prominent for Indian culture. If we see his life, he was born in Kundagrama, close to Vaishali. If we see his family, his father's name was Siddhartha, his mother's name was Trishula, and he was directly linked with the royal family. If we see his early life, attracted to spiritual life from childhood itself, left his home at the age of 30, then wandered for how many years? Roughly 12 years, and in the 13th year, he was able to get the enlightenment, practiced austerities, discarded garments, met Ghoshala for 6 years. He was together with that Mahakali Goshala. Okay, but eventually they parted ways over the differences in their ideas with respect to God. So at the age of 42, he got enlightenment, became a Tirthankar and Mahavir. His teachings he preached for next 30 years, patronized by both rich as well as elite people. Died around 72 when he was 72 in Pavapuri, and his death or final liberation was a joyous event for the Jainas. I hope all of you are aware about Santhara. Santhara, it's a kind of fast which is done just before death. Okay, and that's how they get the final liberation. So that's why it is termed as a joyous event rather than that of a grieving one, because you get out of the cycle of life and death. Followers initially from all sections of society, later confined to trading and money lending communities. उनमें ज़्यादा इनके followers थे. What was the reason? The major reason was that Jainism believes in complete non-violence. Complete non-violence means you cannot even affect those things which you consider as non-living. So that's why whenever we practice agriculture, naturally there's going to be death of millions of lives. Okay, it may not be human life, but there are going to be some. That's why they are not invested in the various parts of farming. The farming related में नहीं होता. In fact, I invest a lot in stock market. The stock markets में Jain people, they do not invest in those companies which are taking any form of life. Do not invest in that. जैसे non-veg का अगर कोई आएगा, they will not invest. Okay, so that's how much they are conscious about it. okay, because they are following it from millennia, and that's why it has become part of their system. Okay, for people those who are not followed Jainism, it will feel like ye kaise kar lete ho, okay, but the important thing is the first principle, and it is non-violence, absolute non-violence, okay, complete non-violence. The most important principle, no other religion lays as much emphasis on non-violence as much as Jainism. Even Gandhiji, he was directly affected by the ideas of Jainism, okay, he was the one who learned from it, and that's how non-violence became a principle in his own private life. Okay, so we have to understand non-violence is very, very important. This is with respect to the food that you intake, this is with respect to your interpersonal relationship, this is with respect to your relationship with others. This is something which is very, very important. Second, salvation through self-discipline. Self-discipline is very, very important here. So it teaches that liberation from the cycle of rebirth can be achieved through strict self-discipline, austerities and ethical conduct. According to Jainism, the world has no beginning or end. कोई beginning or end नहीं है. It goes through a series of progress and decline according to an eternal law. Dualism, the world is seen as concept two eternal substances, soul as well as the matter. That is, one is Jeev and then Ajeev, and their interconnection creates karma. Karma is a very beautiful concept which you need to understand. Okay, karma as a concept is very different in Buddhism, Hinduism and Jainism. Okay, in Jainism, karma is more of a karmic particle or a particle of the universe which get attached to your soul, okay, it get attached to your body also. And unless every small component of karma is taken out of your body and soul, you cannot have enlightenment. So karma is seen more of a negative entity in Jainism. Please remember it, okay? It is considered as a karmic particle, a particle which gets attached to your soul as well as your body. And unless the last shred of karma is taken away from you, you cannot enter the process of enlightenment, or you cannot achieve complete liberation. Okay, that is what is the concept in Jainism. In Hinduism, karma is something which is directly linked with something that you do. Okay, so it's a part of any activity, any action which has been taken part by. That is what is the concept in Hinduism. While in Buddhism, since this is a religion which is a believer in mindfulness, okay, it believes in mindfulness. In Buddhism, this comes at the level of intention. है ना कि अगर गलत इंटेंशन है तो वहीं पे काम खत्म हो गया, even if you do that action or not. So this is the concept of karma, very different in all three. Buddhism, it says be mindful, and since you are mindful, you're not going to even think about it. Okay, that kind of control is required on your mental faculty. Hinduism, गलत सोच ले कोई बात नहीं, करो मत, ठीक है, it's fine. But when it comes to Jainism, this is not that easy of a concept. In Jainism, this karmic particle is going to get attached, and this karmic particle they generate because of your lack of knowledge. Okay, because of lack of knowledge, it gets attached to your body and your soul, and unless each and every karmic particle is separated from both of your body and soul, you cannot achieve liberation. In fact, the last santhara, जो last में fast किया जाता है, that is done in order to get all the karmic particle out of your body and soul, and once that is done, you achieve liberation. So that's why the concept of karma is completely different. हम तो आज की डेट में टाइम पास लेवल वाला कर्मा बोलते हैं, इंस्टेंट कर्मा है ना, कुछ गलत बोला एकदम इसके साथ भी गलत हो गया. That's how we see it, but it's one of the most important concept, at least in Indian subcontinent, and the religions which have grown in this area, हर किसी में कर्मा का कंसेप्ट है, बट उसका जो मीनिंग है वो बहुत डिफरेंट है हर किसी का. Then these were the major ideas which you need to understand, that unless we get over karma, we cannot get liberation. This is directly linked with tenets of Jainism. Then three ratnas. This is something which you have to follow. This is how you can beat the karma. Right faith, right knowledge and right conduct. ये तीन चीजें चाहिए. Plus in your life you should have these 5 great vows. Okay, These 5 great vows include: number 1, not to kill or injure, ahimsa. By your any activity, there should not be any killing. Number 2, not to steal, चोरी करना नहीं करना. Number 3, not to lie. These 3 are common to everyone, even if you are a monk or you are a lay follower or common follower. However, for those people who are going to become monk, there are 2 extra also. Like number 4, it is celibacy, that you are going to follow the path of brahmacharya, not having sexual activity in the life. And finally, not to possess property. You are not going to possess property because householder के लिए last दो possible नहीं है. That's why for the common followers आप 3 व्रत कर लीजिए, बहुत है आपके लिए. And for those who are going to become monk, जिनको monk बनना है, you have to follow all 5 of them. तो इन्हीं को हम बोलते हैं पंच महाव्रत. Okay, these are the Panch Mahavrat or the 5 vows which are required to be followed, okay, by every Jaina. अगर आप common follower है तो first 3, monk है तो all 5. Spread of Jainism, if we talk about it, so Jainism, it spread initially in the eastern part of India, and from the eastern part of India, eventually it went towards the south. I hope all of you know about the event, which is the most important event, that the Magda famine. And during the time of famine, some of the people who were followers of Jainism, they went towards the area of south, most importantly towards Karnataka. Okay, and through this, with a period of time, this has become important and spread in different parts of India. One important thing with respect to Jainism is, Jainism has never been a religion which has been followed by a very high number of people. It is having a specific base, and that base is having immense faith in their religion. Okay, and that's why the spread of Jainism, even though this has been limited, and why it has been limited? Because it is allowing you, okay, very austere life. बहुत मुश्किल लाइफ जीनी पड़ती है इसके लिए. Very specific professions you can go to. Okay, the food habits are very much limited because naturally non-veg तो छोड़ो, you can also not consume those things like onion, है ना, खाने पीने में सबसे ज़्यादा टेस्ट किस चीज़ का आता है? ऑनियन का आता है ना, गार्लिक का आता है, पोटैटो. So these things, okay. So with respect to diet also, severe restrictions are there in Jainism. That's why it is difficult for people like those ना कि वो सिर्फ कन्वर्जन करने के लिए एक्सेप्ट कर ले, हो ही नहीं सकता, because following it in itself is very difficult, and that can only happen with the nurture of socialization from the early life. It's so difficult to just accept Jainism and then follow it, because half of your life you have been committing sins with respect to Jainism, okay, and then you're going to follow it. It's next to impossible. Plus occupations के लिए ऊपर काफी restrictions हैं. You cannot become part of agriculture. That's why majority of the Jaina people, they are traders or they are having secondary economic activities. Primary economic activities में कभी participate नहीं करते. And that's the major reason. Why? Because while doing primary economic activities, naturally there is going to be some form of violence. Okay, you go for mining, you go for agriculture, कुछ ना कुछ तो killing होने ही वाली है. But anyway, it spread to some areas of like Karnataka, Western India, Gujarat region and Rajasthan. These areas are very much part of followers of Jainism, and even in south, okay, in the area of Kanchipuram, we have some of the followers of Jainism. Okay, now this is the concept of non-violence. Non-violence के अंदर बहुत ज़्यादा emphasis है. Extreme measures are there. Okay, like see, the 5 vows are common to both monks and lay followers, but they relaxed for the lay ones. The monks were to observe the vows more rigorously than the lay followers. That is very clear. Jainism places great emphasis on non-violence, strict observance. The faith, they wear even a muslin cloth around their mouth and nose so that they would not inhale small insect even by mistake. तो कोरोना का जो मास्क है वो परमानेंट है. So those who are strict followers, completely strict followers, they do it to avoid trampling on ants and other insects. Jain monks use feathers to sweep the path before walking. So if you want to be a complete follower of this path, so it's not easy. It's not easy. हम चारवाक लोगों के लिए तो बिल्कुल नहीं है. Jaina, they could not practice agriculture or other crafts. They involve killing or injury to living organism. Hence they took to trading and money lending and excelled in it. As a result, they are closely associated with urbanization. So इसलिए maximum Jaina कौन से एरिया में रहते हैं? Urban areas में. Egalitarian religion, so there is no such division of the Varna system which we have in the Hinduism. However, okay, they could also have a status of Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra, not on the basis of birth, on the basis of what you do, on the basis of your action, not on the basis of your birth. Okay. Then women were admitted into the monastic order. However, as a woman, one cannot attain salvation by accumulating merit by good deeds. Women could be reborn as a man and then strive to attain salvation. Okay, so this is something which is believe in this, and this is also one of the reason why we have a division in Jainism, Shwetambar and Digambar. Okay, so in Shwetambar there is an acceptance, okay, that women can also have a salvation in Shwetambar, but in Digambar, no, do not believe in it. Okay, they do not believe in it. So as we know, Jain Schism means difference, and we see the creation of two schools. So Mahavira's death, schism occurred due to famine. In this famine, Bhadrabahu along with some people went to south, while the other they remained in the north under the leadership of Stalabhadra. These people who remained in the north, they started breaking with the tradition of Mahavir. Okay, they started accepting more those things. That's why the people, when they came from the south under the leadership of Bhadrabahu, there's a difference, and the Shwetambar and Digambar got separated. In general, the Digambar do not wear any clothes, while the Shwetambar they wear clothes. Second, as we have just discussed, Digambar, they believe that they have never had a woman Tirthankara, while the Shwetambar believe that the 19th Tirthankara was Malinath. Okay, and that was a woman. Okay, so these two are the major differences over Shwetambar and Digambar that you have to remember. And Jain text, we have many Jain texts. The Jain texts are known as Angas, okay, or Siddhanta. Okay, Siddhanta बोलते हैं, क्या बोलते हैं? Angas and काफी सारे उप-अंगाविस भी हैं. Okay, major text and the minor text. This is something which you need to remember with Jainism. As far as exam goes, okay, as far as exam goes, mains में ज़्यादा question Jainism पे नहीं आते. But in prelims, every year you will encounter one question on Jainism and Buddhism. दोनों पे क्वेश्चन काफी आते हैं, तो एग्जाम के पर्सपेक्टिव से भी इसको समझो. ओके, देन दिस इज मोर लाइक अ स्टोरी. ओके, इन दिस स्टोरी देयर इज अ क्वीन कमलावती हु इज टेलिंग द किंग, ओके, दैट व्हाटएवर लाइफ यू आर लिविंग इट इज absurd. ओके, जो लाइफ जी रहे हो बकवास है. क्या करना है आपको? मटेरियल पोजेशन ब्रिंग नो लास्टिंग सेटिस्फैक्शन. Only spiritual knowledge offers true salvation. Worldly life is likened to a bird trapped in a cage, and finally asceticism and detachment are paths to liberation. So these are many stories. जब अगर हम पढ़ेंगे इनके specific text, तो ऐसे बहुत सारी चीजें हमें वहाँ पढ़ने को मिलती हैं. Why do we see decline of Jainism in India in general? इसके कुछ specific reasons हैं. Like number one, absence of royal patronage. Very few kings, okay, have given patronage to Jainism directly. Like we see Chandragupta Maurya. Yes, he was a follower of Jainism. Okay, but that too we do not know throughout his life, because whatever evidence we have, it is about the last years of his life. We have King Kharavala, okay, from Odisha. He was a follower of Jainism, but we have never had a king like Ashok who was a follower of Jainism, which could have spread it on a very larger scale. So this absence of royal patronage was one of the major reasons why Jainism could not become as mass spread as that of Buddhism. Second, there was a split, and whenever there is a split, eventually it affects the roots of any religion. Number three, lack of missionary zeal. तो उतना conversion के पीछे नहीं जाते हैं Jainism में. Okay, like we see lots of conversion in Buddhism as well as Islam. That kind of conversion is not there in Jainism. Fourth, factionalism. We have seen the severity of practices. So following Jainism, just converting to Jainism is something which is not that much important. What is more important is following its basic practices, and that again requires a lot of patience, and majority of people cannot do that. And the spread of Buddhism as a rival faith. Buddhism and Jainism, they were rising at the same time, and that's why if one is going to become super hit, तो दूसरे वाले का तो एरिया कुछ लिमिटेड होने ही वाला है. That's why Buddhism got affected by that. Now we see Buddhism. As all of us know, Buddhism is more about a medium path or middle path. Okay, Buddhism, whenever we talk about it, eventually, initially this was one of the most important religion, but with the period of time, it became completely out from India. Birth name was Siddhartha. Family lineage again, Sakya clan. He was the son of Shuddhodhan and Queen Maya. Queen Maya is very important because lots of you can say Jataka stories or the Buddhist art, it is linked with Maya's dream. Okay, the Maya's dream was with respect to the white elephant which came in her dream, which gave the ideas either the person is going to become a very big king or it's going to become a very important sage or who's going to be a founder of any religion. But this was the birth prophecy at the time of his birth. The birthplace was Lumbini near Kapilavastu, which all of us know is in Nepal. Upbringing, he was raised in a very luxurious kind of lifestyle. He was not allowed to understand any of the problem faced by the common people, so that eventually his father and mother were very desperate that this person should remain a king. He should not give away the kingdom to somebody else. Okay, and finally he married Yashodhara and they had a son named as Rahul. Now there are various symbols linked to him. Okay, like we have Buddha's birth is linked with lotus, his departure or renunciation, जो उन्होंने संन्यास लिया, that is linked with horse. Enlightenment is linked with Bodhi tree. Then the first sermon जो उन्होंने दिया था ना सारनाथ में, that is very much linked with Dhamma Chakra, Privartana, 24 spokes eventually which became part of our emblem also. And finally it is about Mahaparinirvan, which is directly linked to his death. So the major turning point, okay, as all of us know, once he went out, he encountered four things. Number one, he encountered an old man, which made him realize that everybody is going to go through the process of aging, which is bound to be very painful. Right? It is not going to be like the youth. Second, he saw a sick man, which again increased his questions about human existence. Then he saw a corpse, which signifies that there is only one truth in life, and that is death. Death is bound to be there for everyone. And finally, a serene wandering ascetic hinting at path beyond worldly suffering. So when he saw these various things, eventually he got affected by them. And finally he took the decision, okay, and he eventually went out of the royal palace. And this event is also known as the Great Going Forth, or also known as Mahabhirashya Kramana. This is how he went out along with his chariot and his charioteer. His name was Chana. He went out, and just same story like that we have in Jainism, that same story is there. He also went through the process of suffering. Okay, initially he joined few people like Alara Kalama as well as Udaka Ramputra. Through them he was trying to understand, okay, what is the ultimate reality. But finally he realized, okay, that this is not going to work. He was just going through very high level of asceticism, बहुत सारी चीजें, but he was given a little bit of food by Sujata, and thereafter he went for meditation, and after 49 days eventually he got the enlightenment. This is the story with respect to his enlightenment process. Okay, so initially he was trying to follow very austeric path, ना कि जिसमें कि भाई सबसे ज़्यादा difficult condition हम accept कर लेंगे, but he realized that this is going to lead him to only towards death. Nothing is going to come out of it. That's why he broke his fast, accepted the offering from Sujata, and then eventually went for meditation. This meditation that he did, it was under a Bodhi tree, which eventually became very important in the Buddhist teachings. Then the spread of his teachings. The first sermon that he gave in the deer park in Sarnath, this event is known as Dhamma Chakra Privartana, or the turning of the wheel. And then finally he lived till the age of 80, and he continued. He continued, like it is often said that every day he used to cover a distance of 30 to 35 kilometers. He was a very strong built, except in the monsoon days, because in the monsoon day they used to stay in their caves. Okay, this is how he became prominent. If we talk about Buddhist texts are very prominent. Okay, Buddhist texts are very, very prominent, and there have been various councils. Okay, there have been various councils, like first council, it was at Rajgriha. Rajgriha was the first council, and this under the patronage of Ajatashatru. It was under the control of Upali. In this council we see the recitation of Vinay Pitaka. Vinay Pitaka, it is linked with the rules of the Sangha. If you want to join the Sangha, क्या rules आपको follow करने हैं. Second, Ananda, he was the number one disciple of Buddha, and he recited the Sutra Pitaka, or the sayings of Buddha. And finally, on the basis of that, we see the creation of Abhidhamma. Abhidhamma is about the philosophical meaning of the sayings of Buddha. Three, this combinedly is known as Tripitaka or three baskets. Second council, it has held Vaishali, it led to the split within this. One, they become follower known as Thavridin, and the second eventually became the Mahasangika. There was a split in the Buddhism itself in the second council. Third council, it held under Ashoka. Under Ashoka, eventually we see the final compilation of the majority of the text of Buddhism. And the last is the fourth council. In the fourth council, we see the rise of Mahayana category of Buddhism. Okay, initially Buddha was not considered as a god. He was considered as more of a teacher. He was considered more of somebody who was an enlightened being. However, with the period of time, he was given the status of God. And that's how we see the rise of Mahayana Buddhism. And this Mahayana Buddhism became prominent from the fourth Buddhist council. Whenever we talk about that how these Buddhist texts have been preserved over various centuries, so NCERTs में इसके ऊपर थोड़ा हम लोगों ने बात किया हुआ है that initially they were taught only orally. We do not have any written records. But after his death, through these councils, okay, we start the process of composition. Okay, and finally, जो इनका final shape है, ठीक है, the final shape it has been influenced by the Sri Lanka also, because बहुत सारा जो इनको final shape मिला है वो श्रीलंका में मिला है. In Sri Lanka also we have some texts like Dipavamsha and Mahavamsha. They also provide a lot of information about Buddhism. Okay, even though they are the chronicles of the Sri Lankan nation, but at the same time they provide information about this itself. The oldest writings of Buddhism, they are found in Pali language. With the period of time when Mahayana Buddhism became prominent, they shifted toward Sanskrit. So Sanskrit के अंदर भी बहुत सारा इनका लिखा गया. ठीक है, बाद में काफी सारे translations हुए. This is how we have seen various Buddhist material. Now within Buddhism there are various sects. The various sects which we'll discuss later, बाद में इनका elaborately पढ़ेंगे, but you should know Mahasangika, Saravidan. Okay, so these are the various sects we have. And universities, okay, universities have played a very major role in the writings of Buddhism. Two very famous universities, the first one is Nalanda and the second is Vikramshila. Vikramshila was more famous for the Tantric Buddhism or the Mahayana Buddhism, while Nalanda was more prominent with respect to the early phases of Buddhism. So universities has played a very important role in this. Hinayana form or the lesser vehicle, this is also important, but this has become more popular in Sri Lanka, Burma and Thailand, while the other Southeast Asian countries, while जो हमारा Mahayana Buddhism है, that has become more famous in the case of China. Okay, China केस में वो ज़्यादा famous हो गया. In fact, there is a word known as Theravada. Theravada is a school, okay, which is known as the school of the elder, which is again linked with Hinayana school of Buddhism. Text पाली में कंपोज किए हैं, तीन पार्ट में डिवाइडेड है, सूत पिटका, विनय पिटका एंड अभिधम्मा. सूत पिटका sayings of Buddha, Vinaya Pitaka, they are the standard rules which are to be followed by any monk, and finally comes the Abhidhamma, which provides a perspective on the sayings of Buddha, which deals with ethics of Buddhism. Okay, जो books हैं उनको ये निकाय में डिवाइड करते हैं. Like if we see Sutta Pitaka is divided into various nikayas. Okay, and within these nikayas we have stories like Jatakas. So Jatakas जो है ऐसा नहीं कि अलग से है, Jatakas in itself is a part of Sutta Pitaka. उसी के अंदर ही एक specific text है जिसको हम क्या बोलते हैं, Jatakas. Jatakas is nothing but they are the previous life stories of Buddhas, both of human as well as animal form. Noble truth की अगर हम बात करें तो as we have seen in the case of Taoism, बहुत आसपास में है. There is suffering and sorrow. The cause of human suffering is desire and craving, and this pain can be removed by suppressing desire and craving, and this has to be achieved by following a disciplined life, and this disciplined life is only going to be by follow eightfold path. So 8 specific conditions है जो आपने follow करनी है. According to Buddha, a person should aim at attainment of nirvana or the highest bliss. It could be achieved by any person by leading a virtuous life and by following the noble eightfold path. So anybody could achieve it. There is no specific limitation with respect to men or women, which we see in the case of Jainism. तो एक difference है Jainism और Buddhism में. Buddhism में they allow that it can be attained even by the women also. Eightfold path में right views, resolve, speech, conduct, livelihood, effort, recollection as well as meditation. Meditation plays a very, very important role in the case of Buddhism. That's why you must have seen Dalai Lama also. Dalai Lama is mostly focusing on meditation, because once you go for meditation, your internal character starts becoming purified. Okay, you become more conscious of your activities, first your mental activities, then your activities with respect to the physical form, and that makes you, okay, very much closer to enlightenment in the long run. Here Buddha did not mention or talk about God. He neither accepted nor denied the existence of God. इस चीज को आप ध्यान रखेंगे. In Jainism there is acceptance of God, but God are always secondary to तीर्थंकार, है ना. फर्स्ट पे क्या आएगा? तीर्थंकार, और the teachers will come. But in the case of Buddhism, neither acceptance nor rejection with respect to Buddha. But it's a travesty कि बाद में बुद्धा को ही गॉड बना दिया. Initially Buddha did not accept that is there a God or there is not a God. He also advocated equality, preached non-violence, but it is not comparable to Jainism. Jainism is something which is extreme non-violence. It promoted trade also, and eventually later on we see they were going to become a believer in mindfulness. कि भाई mindfulness के ऊपर focus करो. When we see the architecture, okay, there are lots of Buddhist site. Okay, Buddhism is something which is very important because the initial architecture of India, okay, art and architecture, it is directly linked with stupas. Stupas, even though they were during the times of the Vedic period also, but they were not that much massive. Once it get attached to Buddhism, stupas were going to become very, very prominent. Okay, so before his death, एक final इनके बीच में discourse चल रहा था with his disciple Ananda. So in this he talks about, okay, कि भाई the Buddha advised against excessive focus on rituals related to his remains and emphasized personal spiritual progress. However, he did acknowledge the potential benefits of offering reverence at stupas, कि भाई आप ऐसा कुछ कर सकते हो. Okay, so that's why stupas, there is Sanskrit word text used for the Pali term known as thupa, where mounds erected to house relics of the Buddha. तो initially ये था. Naturally क्या था? Initially after his death, 9 stupas were created. 9 stupas were created. The maximum number of stupas, as per the tradition, they were created by Ashoka. How many were there? 84,000. अब आज की डेट में बचा तो नहीं है, है ना? We have only few stupas. Like the most famous is that of Sanchi. We also have with respect to Bharhut, और भी कई major stupas है. But as per tradition, there were 84,000 stupas which were built by Ashoka, and they were directly linked to Buddha. Then there is a possibility, this is what was asked in prelims last year, that the Buddhism के जो relics होते हैं, और the stupas जो हैं, they are not starting from Buddhism, they are also pre-Buddhist. So the practice of building stupas might have predated Buddhism, as Buddhists as well. Due to presence of sacred relics, stupa became venerated as symbols of both Buddha as well as his teachings. तो पहले से ही था, but बाद में इसके साथ recognize करने लग गए, and once it got recognized with this, it was eventually going to have very big impact. Even according to Ashoka Vanda, he distributed the Buddha relics and promoted stupa construction across his empire. 84,000 stupa बनाए थे उन्होंने. Then with the period of time, जो stupa का architecture है वो हम बाद में पढ़ेंगे art and culture में. उनका जो stupa का creation का method था, that kept on changing with the period of time. Initially they were very simple in nature. Okay, by the time of Ashoka, उन्होंने थोड़ा उनको enlarge करना शुरू किया, stone architecture वगैरह का यूज किया था, but with the period of time उसको और ब्यूटिफाई करते चले गए, तो बहुत ज्यादा एवोल्यूशन हुआ है with the period of time. शुंगास के टाइम में बहुत ज्यादा इनोवेशन हुआ with respect to stupas. All of you must have known about तोरण द्वार, the 4 entry gates, जिसके ऊपर बहुत सारा पेंटिंग्स वगैरह भी किया जाता है, स्कल्पचर्स भी क्रिएट किया जाता है. Those were done during the time of शुंगास, उनके टाइम में वो सब हुआ है. ठीक है, तो बहुत सारे एक्सपेरिमेंटेशन चलता रहा. नॉर्थ इंडिया में और साउथ इंडिया में बहुत डिफरेंस है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू स्तूपा बिल्डिंग. इन नॉर्थ इंडिया इट इज कंसीडर्ड दैट जो अपना मेन हेड होता है, अंडा जो होता है, टॉप है ना, वेयर वी हैव, विद इन व्हिच वी हैव द रेलिक्स ऑफ बुद्धा, दैट शुड बी वेरी सिंपल. बट इन साउथ इंडिया दे सेड दैट सिंस इट इज वेयर द बुद्धास रेलिक्स आर केप्ट, इट शुड बी द मोस्ट ऑर्नामेंटेड फॉर्म. तो इसलिए आप स्तूपा देखेंगे, सांची स्तूपा एंड अमरावती स्तूपा, देयर इज अ बिग डिफरेंस बिटवीन देम. Sanchi Stupa at the top, it's very simple, but Amravati Stupa, it is very much ornamented. So depending upon the thought process, आपका process change हो जाता है. How are stupas built, as all of us see? So inscription found on railings, pillars of stupa, we get to understand the stupas were not just built by the kings, they were built by the kings, they were built along with the common people, they were built by the traders. So that's why one single person was not responsible for the expansion of stupas in Indian subcontinent. हर किसी ने donation दिया है, बहुत सारे inscription है small small and that provide information about that. Okay, so if we see stupa, ऐसा plan होता है, ठीक है. This areas specifically, okay, this is the middle area where we have the anda or semi-circular. So इस तरीके से बन जाता है. 4 specific directions are there. In 4 direction we have the gates. These gates are known as Torna Dwar. Okay, at the top, okay, at the top we have Yashti, and over the Yashti where we have the umbrella. This is how stupas are built. Okay, and these stupas are found in many parts of the India, and most famous, as we have already discussed, Sanchi, Bharhut, and finally we have is Amravati. These are the most famous one. Even though at Takshila also we found stupas. अब एनसीईआरटीज में इनके ऊपर बात किया हुआ है कि दैट इन अमरावती, ओके, दे फाउंड वन स्तूपा एंड इन 1796. However, they did not pay much attention to that. That's why eventually it could not be preserved. Okay, Pauline Mackenzie documented some of the sculptures, but the report remained unpublished. Thereafter, we see the coming of Walter Elliot. He collected the panels for museums from here. H.H. Cole, he talked about that by stupas को in situ preservation करना है. There are 2 forms of preservation, in situ and ex situ. In situ means wherever it is found वहीं पे उसको preserve करना है. Ex situ museums में हो गया कि उनको आप लेके चले जाओ फिर preserve कर दो. H.H. Cole said that there should be in situ preservation of stupas, but it was unsuccessful. This is the case of Amravati. That's why Amravati का स्तूपा आज की डेट में मिलता ही नहीं है. It is just एक फोटो बनाया हुआ है उसका, but as such वो मिला नहीं. But the story is not same in the case of Sanchi. Sanchi was discovered a bit later in 1818. Then there was proposals to remove its gateway, but it was rejected. And that's why today if we find Sanchi stands as a testament to Buddhist heritage, while Amravati Stupa remains a denuded mound. And इसका reason यही है, इसका preservation ज़्यादा अच्छे से हो पाया, but उसका उतना नहीं हो पाया. तो ये आप याद रखना, prelims में कभी कभार ऐसे statements आ जाते हैं, which of the following stupa is preserved in relatively better condition. तो आंसर अमरावती नहीं होगा, आंसर would be Sanchi. Okay, that will be the answer. So Amravati's earlier discovery might have predated a strong emphasis on in situ preservation. Sanchi's relative completeness at the time of discovery might have influenced the decision to keep it intact. Okay, this is something which you have to remember. Decline of Buddhism in India, हम already बात कर चुके हैं, लगभग सेम ही तरह की कहानी है. Like number 1, fragmentation into multiple realms. Okay, like the initial were only Hinayana, but साथ में महायान में भी डिवाइड हो गया. Shifting languages, initially dependent upon Pali, later they shifted towards Sanskrit. Okay, Sanskrit was very much close to our Hinduism, and eventually जो उनका अलग से meaning था वो finish हो गया. Loss of royal support after Harshvardhana, there was no major king who gave support to Buddhism. Rise of Bhakti movement during the same time in South India. Later on it came to North India. Hun invasion, Hunas, they led to a decline of Buddhism in Northwest. While if we see the Muslim invasion, like all of you know about Bakhtiyar Khalji. So Bakhtiyar Khalji was responsible for the downfall of both Nalanda as well as Vikramshila. So the Muslim invasion was responsible for decline of Buddhism in the eastern part of India. Hun invasion was responsible for decline in northwestern part of India. And during this time, as all of us know, even the Rajputs, they were persecuting the Buddhists. Okay, because they were again the Rajputs, they were not Kshatriyas. They required legitimacy. Legitimacy was going to come from the priestly class. The priestly class, if you want legitimacy from them, naturally you do not have to give any patronage to Buddhist. और भी 2-4 points हैं. We see rise of Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya became a major philosopher by 8th 9th century. And finally, as all of us understand, major tenets of Buddhism, they became part of Hinduism. और एक बार part बन गया, कहानी खत्म. ठीक है? So all the major parts became within the Hinduism. That's why Buddhism spread outside India a lot. Okay, and that's why the land of the origin, India में आज की डेट में ये कम follow किया जाता है, or in Nepal. But if we see countries like Bhutan, if we see areas like Tibet, if we see whole of Southeast Asia, they are a complete follower of Buddhism. Okay. This is the time where we see the beginning of Bhakti, Shiva, Vishnu, Durga, they became very prominent. Revival भी शुरू हो गया था by early medieval period, and that is the reason why Buddhism eventually did not become that much prominent after the early medieval period, और भक्ति जो है वो बहुत important हो गया. ठीक है. Whenever we talk about various schools, तो हमने बात किया अभी heterodox schools का. Heterodox schools are those schools which do not believe in Vedas, but there are some schools who are a believer in Vedas, and these schools they are known as traditional or orthodox schools. Okay, और ऐसे हमारे कितने स्कूल है? 6 स्कूल हैं. विशेषिका है, न्याय है, शंख्य है, योग है, पूर्व मीमांसा है, as well as the उत्तर मीमांसा और वेदांता, and they are linked with various personality like विशेषिका with Guru Kanad, न्याय with Gotama, शंख्या with Kapila, योग with पतंजलि. पतंजलि he was not the founder, उन्होंने कंपाइल किया था सारी प्रैक्टिसेस का, है ना. बाबा रामदेव ने उसको कंपनी बना दिया, है ना, पतंजलि, बट ही वाज द इनिशियल वन टू जस्ट कंपाइल ऑल द योगा प्रैक्टिसेस. तो ऐसा नहीं था कि ही वाज द फाउंडर ऑफ योगा. योगा वाज देयर इन इंडिया. ओके, इनफैक्ट अगर आप स्कल्पचर्स देखोगे ऑफ इवन इंडस वैली सिविलाइजेशन, सम ऑफ दोस postures that look like that of yoga. Okay, so he was just a compiler. Okay, so Purva Mimamsa linked with Gemini and Vedanta linked with Vyas. And even Max Muller is a very important personality. He observed that 6 systems of philosophy were developed over many generations with contribution made by individual thinkers, and they, all of them, they accepted the sanctity of Vedas. जब भी हम schools की बात करें, there are orthodox schools and then there are heterodox schools. Heterodox school में सबसे ज़्यादा important है Buddhism and Jainism. In orthodox school, these are the 6 schools of Indian philosophy. Please remember them. Okay, orthodox, ये prelims में question आ चुके हैं. 2014 में question पूछा था, which of the following are the orthodox school of Indian philosophy, और उसमें एक चारवाक भी दिया हुआ था. अब चारवाक orthodox में नहीं आता, वो किस में आता है? heterodox में आता है. ठीक है, heterodox में आता है. आपको ये भी पता होगा the difference between आस्तिक and नास्तिक. आस्तिक are those schools which are a believer in Vedas. So ये सारे आस्तिक हैं. नास्तिक are those schools who do not believe in Vedas. So नास्तिक स्कूल में आपका Buddhism, Jainism as well as your other heterodox sects which includes your Ajivikas, which includes even your चारवाक, वो सारे आपके नास्तिक स्कूल के अंदर आते हैं. आज की डेट में नास्तिक is something different, है ना. If you're not doing any puja on any of the religious day, you become a Nastik. But in those times, Astik and Nastik had a specific kind of meaning. And that meaning was directly linked with Vedas. If you're a believer in Vedas, you're Astik. If you're not a believer in Vedas, you become a Nastik. So that is very philosophical level, not at the level of. अब इंडिया में जितना भी हम बात करते हैं मॉन्यूमेंट स्कल्पचर्स, उसकी एक पूरी पूरी क्रोनोलॉजी है. लाइक इन 1814 फाउंडिंग ऑफ इंडियन म्यूजियम इन कलकत्ता. फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम म्यूजियम वाज फाउंडेड. 1834 publication of essay on the architecture of the Hindus. Cunningham also explored the stupa at Sarnath. 35 to 42 James Ferguson surveys major archaeological sites. 51 establishment of Government Museum of Madras. 1854 Cunningham publishes the Bhilsa tops, earliest works on Sanchi. 78 Rajendra Lal Mitra publishes the Bodh Gaya, the heritage of Sakya Muni. Sakya Muni because he belongs to Sakya clan, तो Sakya Muni इसलिए बोलते हैं. 80 H.H. Cole appointed curator of ancient monument. 88 passing of Trajet Rov Act, giving the government the right to acquire all objects of archaeological interest. Then in 20th century, 1914 John Marshall and Alfred Fokker, they published the monuments of Sanchi. 23 John Marshall publishes the conservation manual. 55 Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, he leads the National Museum at New Delhi. And finally in 1989 Sanchi was given the status of World Heritage Site. तो यार ऐसा कुछ क्वेश्चन बन सकता है म्यूजियम्स वगैरह के ऊपर, बन सकता है. लाइक द फर्स्ट म्यूजियम इट वाज इन कलकत्ता, देन इट वाज इन मद्रास एंड फाइनली वी सी दैट इन द न्यू दिल्ली. क्या क्या पब्लिश हुआ है. प्लस लास्ट ईयर इन प्रीलिम्स दे आस्क्ड द नेम ऑफ द पर्सनालिटीज. लाइक हियर वी सी द पर्सनालिटीज जेम्स फर्गुसन, अलेक्जेंडर कनिंगम, राजेंद्र लाल मित्र, एच कोल, जॉन मार्शल. तो थोड़ा सा पर्सनालिटीज का नाम याद रखना, ठीक है, कि दे आर लिंक टू विच स्पेसिफिक पार्ट. लास्ट उन्होंने आर्कोलॉजिस्ट पूछा था, अगली बार कुछ और पूछ लेंगे तो वो हमें याद नहीं रहता. बट एनसीईआरटीज में जो कम से कम दिया हुआ है क्रोनोलॉजी, that should be remembered by all of you.
Hi, a very good evening to all of you. I'm Vikas Ahlawat. I'm a former civil servant. I was able to crack UPSC twice. In fact, in 2018, I was able to get highest marks in history optional, and they were around 324. So this year, I'm coming up with a series which I am calling Self-Study History Optional. इस series में 100 से ज़्यादा वीडियो होने वाले हैं, which are going to cover the different nuances of ancient, medieval, modern as well as world history. So those of you who are preparing for 2025, register करिए and try to get the maximum out of this specific initiative of ours. So at Prepcareer IAS, वी आर प्रोड्यूसिंग रिजल्ट फ्रॉम लास्ट मैनी ईयर्स. 2023 में बहुत सारे टॉपर्स हमारे इंस्टीट्यूट से थे. 2022, 21 हर साल बहुत अच्छे टॉपर्स यहाँ से निकले हैं, एंड दे हैव बीन एबल टू गेट वेरी गुड मार्क्स इन हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल. सो दोज ऑफ यू आर थिंकिंग कि यार स्टार्ट करके कितना कर पाएंगे, कितना नहीं कर पाएंगे, वी ऑलरेडी हैव अचीवमेंट्स विद अस. आई वाज एबल टू अचीव, माय स्टूडेंट्स आर अचीविंग, एंड यू कैन बी द नेक्स्ट. इन सेशंस में क्या होने वाला है? नंबर 1, विल बी फोकसिंग ऑन फाउंडेशन ऑफ बेसिक कंसेप्ट्स, स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम व्हाट इज हिस्ट्री, व्हाट इज हिस्टोरिकल पीरियड, व्हाट इज प्रोटो हिस्ट्री, व्हाट इज प्री हिस्ट्री, बेसिक लेवल. ओके. सेकंड, अलाइनमेंट विद यूपीएससी सिलेबस. जितना भी हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल का सिलेबस है वो 51 पार्ट्स में डिवाइडेड है. सो वी आर गोइंग टू अलाइन ईच एंड एवरी कंसेप्ट विद द सिलेबस इटसेल्फ. नंबर 3, वी आर गोइंग टू फोकस ऑन आंसर राइटिंग. ऑल ऑफ यू नो कि जो मेंस है वो ऑब्जेक्टिव नहीं होता है, वो सब्जेक्टिव लेवल पे होता है, और आप सब लोगों को आंसर राइटिंग सीखना शुरू करना पड़ेगा, है ना. वी डू नॉट हैव टू मच ऑफ टाइम, तो स्टार्टिंग से ही आंसर राइटिंग शुरू करेंगे. एंड नंबर 4, द ओवरऑल पैकेज इज़ वेरी हॉलिस्टिक इन नेचर. तो अगर आप इसको अच्छे से कर लेते हैं तो जो बेसिक लेवल फाउंडेशन हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल की वो कंप्लीट हो जाएगी. यू आर गोइंग टू गेट मैनी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग्स अलॉन्ग विद दिस. ओके. 100+ सेशन है, चारों पार्ट कवर होंगे. थीम वाइज सेग्रीगेटेड डायग्राम, फ्लो चार्ट, जितने भी इंपॉर्टेंट एनसीईआरटीज हैं. देखो अगर हम सारी एनसीईआरटीज को कंबाइन कर दें, एंशिएंट, मिडिवल, मॉडर्न वर्ल्ड ऑफ वेरियस बोर्ड्स ऑफ इंडिया, तो 25 से 26 एनसीईआरटी निकल के आती हैं. उन सबको हमने कोहेरेंट फॉर्म में डिज़ाइन किया है सो दैट यू कैन लर्न द बेस्ट फ्रॉम दैट. ओके. बिकॉज देखो हिस्ट्री में रिसर्चेज चलती रहती हैं. अभी तमिलनाडु की जो एनसीईआरटीज हैं दे आर मोर इंपॉर्टेंट इन कंपेरिजन टू द रीसेंट हिस्ट्री देन द प्रीवियस हिस्ट्री जो कि आर.एस. शर्मा वगैरह, सतीश चंद्रा या फिर बिपिन चंद्रा ने लिखी हैं. दैट्स वाई वी आर कवरिंग ऑल द एनसीईआरटीज, एंड दैट्स वाई 100+ सेशंस हो जा रहे हैं टोटल मिला के. देन 30+ वैल्यू एडेड आपको डॉक्यूमेंट मिलने वाले हैं, डेडिकेटेड आंसर राइटिंग सेशन मिलेंगे, जूम सेशंस भी करेंगे बाद में, ताकि आप लोगों की जितनी भी डाउट्स हों विद रिस्पेक्ट टू लर्निंग दे कुड बी सॉल्व्ड. ओवरऑल जो है आपको क्लास की पीपीटीज मिलेंगी, कंसेप्ट लिस्ट मिलेगा, पीवाईक्यूज, जितने भी पीवाईक्यूज हैं उनको अच्छे से हमने डिज़ाइन कर दिया ताकि आप सब उनको अच्छे से पढ़ सकें. माइंड मैप मिलेंगे पूरे सिलेबस के, वर्कबुक और लर्निंग असाइनमेंट्स मिलेंगे, एंड सेल्फ असेसमेंट टेस्ट, सो दैट वंस यू लर्न समथिंग तो साथ में उसको एटलीस्ट इवेल्युएट भी करना चाहिए ना, कि भाई हमें कुछ समझ में आया भी है, नहीं आया, एटलीस्ट जितना रिक्वायर्ड है वहाँ तक पहुँचे हैं या फिर नहीं पहुँचे हैं. तो आपको करना क्या है, व्हाट वी नीड टू डू दैट, सबसे पहले आप रजिस्टर कर लीजिए. ठीक है. आपको एक स्पेसिफिक गूगल शीट मिलेगा, उसमें आप रजिस्टर कर लीजिए. देन एज ऑल ऑफ अस अंडरस्टैंड हर किसी के पास लिमिटेड स्लॉट्स हैं, तो आपको एक स्पेसिफिक कॉल आएगा, एंड दैट इज समथिंग विच वी आर कॉलिंग एट स्क्रीनिंग प्रोसेस. बिकॉज अगर हमें आपको ये सारी सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड करनी है, द नंबर ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स विच वी कैन हेल्प दे आर ऑलवेज लिमिटेड इन नेचर. सो अकेडमिक काउंसलर इज गोइंग टू कॉल यू, दे गोइंग टू हेल्प यू, और दे गोइंग टू अंडरस्टैंड आपकी रिक्वायरमेंट क्या है. हो सकता है आप कॉलेज के फर्स्ट ईयर में हो, सेकंड ईयर में, थर्ड ईयर में हो, और यू मे हैव ऑलरेडी प्रिपेयर्ड फॉर सम टाइम एंड यू आर नॉट गेटिंग द डिजायर्ड रिजल्ट. तो इसलिए हमें स्क्रीनिंग प्रोसेस चाहिए होगा. एंड फाइनली ऑन द basis of this, you're going to get the benefit of this program.